I was halfway through folding laundry when I noticed Daniel had left his laptop open on the dining table. He never did that. Not once in our 7 years of marriage. At first, I told myself not to look. It was probably nothing, just work files or one of those productivity spreadsheets he kept obsessing over. But my eyes caught a folder on the desktop. It was bolded, as if recently modified. My new life. I froze. My fingers paused in the air, clutching one of his t-shirts. My throat went dry. The laundry basket tilted sideways onto the floor, but I didn't move. I knew I shouldn't have clicked. I told myself a dozen reasons not to. But I did. And it was locked. Password protected. No clue, no hint. Just a silent, sealed door titled with a phrase I couldn't ignore. My heart pounded in my ears. Was he leaving me? That night at dinner, Daniel sat across from me with his usual quiet smile. He'd always been that way, calm, steady, measured. But lately, that calm had turned into something else. Distant. Distracted. Unreachable. He asked me about my day. I lied. Told him I had a client consultation and forgot to mention the folder I'd seen. I watched him. Closely. He didn't look guilty. But he didn't look like the man I married, either. Later, in bed, I couldn't sleep. Daniel dozed beside me, breathing steady. I stared at the ceiling, arms crossed tightly over my chest. We had talked about starting a family 2 years ago. Then suddenly, he stopped bringing it up. Said the timing wasn't right. Said he was under pressure at work. But what if he just didn't want a family with me? The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee and his laptop in front of me again. Same folder. Same locked silence. I tried a few obvious passwords, our anniversary, his mother's maiden name, even our old dog's name. Nothing worked. And still, he hadn't said a word. Not about the folder. Not about us. Just silence wrapped in routine. I closed the laptop, hands trembling. In my chest, something small but sharp took root: doubt. When Daniel left for work that day, I stood by the window, watching his car pull out of the driveway. Then I turned back to the laptop and whispered to myself, "What are you hiding from me, Daniel?" Whatever was in that folder, it wasn't just about him. It was about us. Or what was left of us. And I was going to find out. I hadn't meant to snoop. I wasn't the kind of woman who went through her husband's things. Or at least, I used to think I wasn't. But that folder, my new life, it was all I could think about. I found myself glancing at Daniel's laptop each time I passed the dining table, hoping he'd close it, or move it, or even mention it. But he never did. He just acted normal. Like everything was fine. Like we were fine. And that made it worse. On Wednesday, he left for work early. I waited until I heard the garage door shut and his tires roll away before I opened the laptop again. Still password protected. Still no clue. But this time, I looked deeper. I opened his downloads folder. Nothing unusual. Then I checked his recent browser history. Clean. Almost too clean. Only one link stood out: a flower shop. Rose plus Rue, downtown. Daniel hadn't bought me flowers in over a year. I drove there. Not because I had a plan, just a tight feeling in my chest I couldn't ignore. Inside the shop, the woman behind the counter looked up with a smile. "Back again," she said, tilting her head. My stomach twisted. I forced a smile. "Actually, I'm here to pick something up for my husband. Daniel Carter." She typed into the register. "Yep, he picked it up yesterday. A custom bouquet with a white card. Sweet message too." She looked up. "You must be Veronica." I blinked. Yeah, that's me." My voice didn't even sound like mine. It was hoarse. Small. I walked out of the shop holding nothing but questions. He bought me flowers. But never gave them to me. That night, I searched again. I dug through his closet. Checked drawers I hadn't opened in years. I found an old showbox at the back, under a pile of winter clothes. Inside were receipts, loose change, and a burner phone. It was on. I turned it over in my hands, heart hammering. No passcode. Just a few messages. All from an unknown number. Some were photos, out of focus, taken from a distance. Parks. Buildings. Street corners. And one of me. Leaving the grocery store last week. I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. Why was he watching me? Was it him taking these photos? Or someone else? And why did it feel like I was slipping into a story I didn't even recognize anymore? That night, I couldn't eat. Daniel asked what was wrong. I said I was tired. He offered to rub my shoulders. I declined. And when he kissed my cheek before bed, I barely felt it. Instead, I lay awake until I heard him snoring. Then I slipped out of bed, opened my laptop, and opened a new tab. How to recover password-protected folders without alerting the owner. I didn't want to be that wife. But I also couldn't be the last to know. In the morning, Daniel left his cup of coffee on the counter. He never took a sip. He said he had an early meeting. I didn't ask where. And he didn't say. After he left, I stared at the folder one more time. My new life. My hand hovered over the keyboard. This wasn't just about a folder anymore. It was about whether I was still part of his story, or just the ending of a chapter he'd already closed. I don't know what finally pushed me over the edge. Maybe it was the burner phone. Maybe it was the flowers I never received. Maybe it was the quiet way Daniel kissed me that morning, like a man about to say goodbye. Whatever it was, that afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, determined to break into that folder. I tried every combination that came to mind. Birthdays, pet names, wedding dates. Nothing. I was about to give up when I remembered something strange. A few months ago, Daniel and I had gone on a weekend trip to Maine. It was off-season, freezing cold, and we'd ended up in a tiny cabin with no heat. We laughed ourselves to sleep in layers of blankets. It was one of the last times I remember him looking at me like I was still his entire world. The date came back to me, March 6, 2019. I typed it in, heartbeat shaking my chest. Click. The folder opened. For a second, I just stared. Inside were subfolders. Neatly labeled. Organized. They read like chapters in a story I hadn't known he was writing. Blueprints. Medical. Letters to V. Cabin project. Photos. I clicked letters to V first. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. You always said I was quiet. You were right. I keep too much inside. This is the only way I know how to show you what I can't say out loud. This life wore me down, V. I thought I was protecting you by staying quiet. But I realized that silence can also feel like distance. And I think I made you feel alone in our marriage. I'm sorry. There were 6 letters, each more vulnerable than the last. Then I opened Cabin Project. Inside were architectural plans, blueprints, supply lists, a budget breakdown, a small cabin in the Catskills, custom designed, minimalist, solar-powered, and in one of the images, my initials engraved in the wooden headboard, VC. My throat tightened. He had been designing a home. For me. For us. And he hadn't told me. Still in shock, I clicked medical. There, I found something that knocked the air out of me. Appointments. Fertility tests. A consultation with a reproductive endocrinologist. All scheduled over the past 6 months. Without telling me, I blinked at the screen, trying to piece together what I was seeing. Daniel was building a new life, but was I part of it? And then, the final folder, photos. I hesitated. My mouse hovered over it for a long moment. When I finally opened it, I was met with pictures, candid ones, of me, walking through the park, laughing at dinner, reading on the couch. Some were zoomed in from across the street. Others were taken inside the house. But not in a creepy way. They felt tender. Like someone trying to memorize me. and then I saw one labeled for the future. I clicked. It was a rendering of a nursery. Pale green walls. A rocking chair in the corner. And in the center of the room, a crib. Empty. I closed the laptop, hands covering my mouth. I didn't know what to feel. Gratitude? Guilt? Confusion? He had been planning everything with me in mind. But without me. Was that love? Or fear? That evening, I didn't say anything. Daniel walked through the door, loosened his tie, and gave me that same soft smile. I looked at him for a long time. And for the first time in weeks, I asked, "Can we talk tonight?" He nodded, almost too quickly. And in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in a while. Hope. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. No music. No television. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking far too loud. Daniel looked nervous. He kept rubbing his hands together, like he was trying to warm himself up for something he'd been avoiding for too long. I took a deep breath. I opened the folder, I said quietly. He didn't flinch. Didn't ask which folder. He just nodded, slowly, as if he knew this moment would come. "Okay," he said. "Then I think it's time I tell you everything." He leaned back in his chair, eyes red. And for once, he didn't try to protect me with silence. "I started that folder because I didn't know how to talk to you. After we lost the first pregnancy, you shut down. And I did too. I thought maybe if I stayed strong and acted like it didn't crush me, you'd feel safer. But I see now, you probably felt alone." He paused. "I didn't want to pressure you into trying again. I didn't want to bring it up if you weren't ready." I swallowed hard. My chest burned. "You should have told me, Daniel. About the cabin. The appointments. The letters." "I was going to," he whispered. "But I wanted it to be real first. I wanted to show you I was serious this time. No more empty talks. No more half decisions. Just something real. Something that said, I still believe in us." I looked at him for a long time. This man, this quiet, closed-off, detail-obsessed man, had been building a world around me, and I had been tearing it down in my mind, piece by piece. "And the photos?" I asked softly. "The ones where I didn't know you were there?" Daniel gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. "I missed you," he said. "Even when you were right there. I just didn't know how to say it. So I watched. I saved moments I didn't want to forget." My throat closed up. Not because it was wrong, but because it was so honest. So flawed. So human. That night, we didn't rush to fix anything. We just talked. About the cabin. The baby room. The fear. The grief. I told him how angry I had been. How scared. How I thought he was leaving me, and how stupid I felt for not just asking. He listened. Held my hand. Said sorry more than once. But not in a forced way. In a real way. We didn't make promises that night. We made plans. To visit the cabin site. To go to that fertility appointment, together this time. To stop waiting for perfect timing. Weeks passed. Things didn't magically become perfect. But they became honest. And in that honesty, we found each other again. One Sunday morning, we drove up to the property. It was quiet, still just a blueprint on frozen soil. But I walked through it anyway, room by imagined room, while Daniel held my hand. At the center of the space, where the bedroom would be, he stopped me. "This is where I'd put the bed," he said. "With the headboard?" I asked, smiling. "Yeah. The one with your initials," he said. "Only now, I think I'd carve something else." I looked at him. "What?" He stepped behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. "Ours. Together. One name. One future." And for the first time in a long, long while, I believed him. And more than that, I believed in us.